Welcome back to Second Breakfast and our ongoing gaming discussions, bringing you the best thoughts, theories, and literary analysis this side of the hooded one.
I know what that means. I know exactly what that means. Today we're talking about Path of Exile 2. We had a great discussion about the first Path of Exile about, I don't know, a year and a half ago.
2, actually.
Was it 2 years ago?
No, we had 2 discussions.
Oh, sorry. I was like, what is time?
2 incredibly memorable
crisis.
Episodes, I guess.
No, that's right. There was a second one. Anyway, So we're going to talk about Path of Exile 2, a game I have not played, but Cam has played extensively. And as myself, as a big Diablo IV player, as a person who's interested in gaming in general, I'm really excited to hear about this because this game is currently only in early access. If you don't know, if you're new to gaming or you just don't know, early access means the game is available for people who want to play it, but they're still working things out. The full game's not available yet. Sometimes when games are in early access, you can only play it on PC or whatever. This is available. You can even play it on the Xbox. But also, usually Path of Exile is free, which is like amazing. But the early access is what, $30?
Right.
Which is like still incredible for such a big game.
It's an unbelievable deal.
Yeah, so you decided to do it. We don't usually play games in early access. We usually just like wait for bugs to get worked out.
You're not usually able to on console.
That's true. Yeah, usually it's PC only.
Since I've gotten the Steam Deck, I've done a lot more early access.
Okay. So anyway, so we're here to hear Cam discuss his early access impressions. And I'm excited to talk about this. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I've been watching you play. I've seen you play all the different casts. You're telling me casts. What are they called? Classes. I've seen you talk about all the challenges and excitements you've had. So this is going to be cool.
I cannot stop talking about or playing this game. It's unbelievably good.
And it's been really highly anticipated because there's been a lot of press and promo for it, and like seeing gameplay both from Cam and just in like trailers and stuff, I'm like, this looks like what Diablo IV was supposed to be.
You've watched every trailer for this thing.
Yes, I sure have. So I'm excited to dive in. Go ahead, sorry.
When we did the original PoE episodes, we did 2 episodes on the first game as I was muscling through that incredible long campaign, which I've gone back to again recently because I've just gotten the bug again. But my purpose in those first 2 episodes was to convince Maggie and Tristan to play the game. That has not worked yet, but I continue to bully both of them into playing PoE 2.
I did try to play the first Path of Exile. I played it for a couple hours.
Yeah.
And it was just very solidly not for me. It was a little too complicated. It was a little too clunky. I just could not click with it.
It's not beginner friendly.
The systems were way too complex for me, and I just wasn't liking it, so I stopped.
The community is very beginner friendly. The game is not. Yeah. And I think all of that has been solved in the second game.
I was going to say, that's going to be one of my biggest questions during this discussion, like, is how much does this improve upon or change or, become more friendly compared to the first one?
And I have only good news to tell you.
Oh my gosh, incredible. Well, okay, so let's back up from the beginning. How much have you played of this game?
Well, because it's in early access, there's not an exact counter on the Xbox. Usually you can tell like how many days you've played a game.
Nice.
Which is a lot. For things like Destiny, it's a lot.
Nice to measure in days. How many days of Destiny do you think you've played over the course of your life?
I'm not telling you. I'm not saying that publicly. It's enough days of Diablo IV, but this one is definitely dozens of hours.
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
Love to hear that. And then how much of the actual game, like how much of the game is available and how much of it have you played?
So the first 3 acts are available right now during the early access period.
Cool. I
have only played the first act, but I've played it with every available class.
Okay.
So I've done the first act 6 times.
Incredible. Okay. I definitely want to hear about all the classes, but I think we'll do that later. I think let's stay big picture here for now. So you've played Act 1, but 6 times so dozens and dozens of hours. So like, what are your first impressions? What are you thinking? What are your like off the dome ideas?
This is everything I've ever wanted from a fantasy game.
Whoa.
Or from an ARPG or from an RPG.
Everything. It's everything you've wanted.
Pretty much. Maybe I'll think of a couple things, but
that's pretty great. So like, what are some of the things that you always want out of a fantasy/ARPG game?
Levels.
Okay. Oh, so what do you mean? What do you mean when you say levels?
I'm sick of open worlds. I think it's done well
I think we all are.
It's done well a lot. But one of my very favorite things, I mean, this goes back to like the Lego games when I was a kid. I liked fully exploring the maps.
Yes.
And opening it up. Diablo 3 earlier Diablos when there's the fog covering up the map, and the more you explore, the more you uncover the fog.
So you've like checked it off. Yeah.
Yes. And I think Diablo 4, which has that big open world, I like that open world, and I
Yeah.
know it really well now. Like, I know Kyovashad like the back of my hand. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
it's
I
pretty
know-
great.
I know Kyovashad better than I know towns I've lived
I was
in.
going to say, you know it better than the city you've lived in for most of your adult life.
That's true. So that open world I've adjusted to. There are vehicles, there are horses to get around
Yeah.
in Diablo 4, but
Yeah.
I really love isolated, smaller maps, which are, functionally levels
Yes.
that you can fully explore and then move on to a different one where it's not an endless sea that you have to like lawnmower back and forth to explore.
I was going to say, do you go back through the same locations over and over again?
Yeah, and
Okay.
I think it's like after 10 or 15 minutes of you not being on a map, it kind of resets. So you have to go through it again.
Oh, wow.
But they're gorgeous, and they're never that big, and it's still incredibly fun and rewarding to do.
When you have to re-explore, like, or re-unlock a location, is there new loot, new NPCs, anything like that?
I mean, the enemies come back, and sometimes there's different loot. It's not like everything has been looted and it's all
Cool.
empty. Yeah,
New, like, side quests or anything? Or are there side quests in this? There must be.
there are quests you get from all the NPCs in your little camp.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So
Okay.
I try to have all of those open so I can fully, do everything for one location before I move on to the next to get the
Okay.
rewards and stuff. So yeah, that's a big thing for me, was having the levels and the doable maps.
I like that.
I like-
Rather than being overwhelmed by the open world.
Yeah, I want to be able to master each space. And I don't mean that I have to be good at it, because I get my ass kicked constantly in this game. But I want to have that sense of completion on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, I think in an ARPG that is what you want. An open world, I think, works better in just a different kind of game, like
Yeah.
in an Assassin's Creed or something like
Sure.
that. Yeah, so that makes sense.
And the other aspect of when I say levels is leveling. That's the
Yeah.
RPG thing.
Yeah.
And I love the way this game has shifted the way you level up, the way
Okay.
you upgrade and build into your character.
So how does it work here?
We're not going to talk about classes quite yet, but enough to say there are 6 classes and you do not customize what your character looks like.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's like in Diablo 3, it's the same thing. Like you pick, I think you can, actually, I don't think you can even pick gender. I think you just,
No.
you pick the witch doctor and that's what you are.
Yes, there's one of each.
No, you do pick gender. Sorry, you pick gender
Yes,
in
you
Diablo
do.
3.
You do.
I just
In
remembered.
this, there's just one built-out look for each class.
Cool.
And I like that. As much as I like the fully customizing, giving it a stupid name,
Yeah, it's fun.
nothing hooks me in an RPG more weirdly than taking away that aspect of control.
Sure.
Sometimes I want to role play. When I play Elden Ring, I named my character Gandalf. I played with a staff, and I tried to think, okay, I'm going to play 100 hours of this as if these were the adventures before The Hobbit
Oh,
of
very
young
cool.
Gandalf. I liked that. But I liked being Kratos in God of War more.
Yes, when you just get to fully embody a pre-written character.
And this is somewhere in
Yeah.
the middle, because there
Yeah.
are 3 subclasses in each class. You can still very much go your own way and chart your own path. But I like that the look is pre-decided.
Interesting.
There's no
especially-
decision fatigue.
Especially because I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but in something like Diablo 4, you don't really get dialogue options. Like, you don't really get to role play. You get to, like, build out your, you create
It's a gameplay role-playing.
yeah,
It's
like,
not the character as
yeah,
much.
like, so you don't get to, like, choose different things to say. You don't get to react to different things. Like, you get to choose what kind of loot you have and what kind of skills you build upon. But, like, that's the most role playing you get
Sure.
to do. So the idea of fully customizing your character is fun, but then you never really think about it ever
And
again.
for an isometric game where you zoomed out and you're seeing your character all the time, if you give the player the ability to change the facial hair, the hair color, how the person looks, you're almost immediately going to fuck up the art style.
Yeah.
And I really like that it's always cool and embedded in this gorgeous medieval fantasy world.
Cool,
Because
yeah.
I can't give it purple hair and a weird mustache. And
Sure.
I like that there's a consistency in the art style because the game is drop dead gorgeous. On a technical level, you have things like the particle effects, when there's electricity, which I always love to play with,
Yeah.
or fire or frost or all of those elemental things, but also the lighting system, the environments. I grabbed you over the other day to look at all the little hedgehogs running around this
Oh, they
environment.
were so cute.
The variety in the
Yeah.
environments. It is beautiful.
Okay.
So it's gorgeous to look at, and it's gorgeous to play.
Interesting. So what else about the leveling? Sorry, I think we went on a tangent about customization. What else
yeah.
about the leveling do you like?
So the skill tree, which I know was overwhelming. I mean, it's overwhelming
Still
for
is.
everyone. The first time you look at it in PoE 1.
Scariest thing I've ever seen.
It is clearer for me.
Okay.
In PoE 2, the immediate directions and paths you get, when you get your first point in the passive skill tree, there are 2 nodes, you choose one of 2 nodes, and it's clearer. Like, do you want to, if you have a melee class, one of the characters was like, do you want to do more melee damage right now, or do you want to restore your mana faster?
Sure, okay.
So you can make an initial choice, and then the way it branches from there felt much cleaner to me. It didn't feel as overwhelming.
Okay.
But also the other thing you level up along the way, you get more of these gems that you cut into different skills. But instead of cutting skill gems and almost slotting your skills into your weapons, like gems in Diablo 4, now you just have the skills, and then you have normal kind of gems that enhance certain items.
Oh, that's so much better. Because that was one of the things that totally threw me the first time on the first game. I was like, "Why? This doesn't make any sense. Why can't I just have the skill? Why does it have to be tied to a weapon?" And never made any sense to me.
And there are lots of different skills you can equip, and the symmetries and the connections between your skills are really cool too.
Neat.
But there are also support gems you get that you can cut into different things that can accentuate and enhance skills you already have.
That makes more sense. Like, that's kind of what the Diablo 4 system is like.
There's an inventory screen that makes sense. It's the grid system that you know and love or hate from Diablo 2 and 4.
Spoiler, I hate it, but it's fine.
Yeah, but you're used to it now.
Yeah, I'm more used to it now.
This one's more like Diablo 2 than it is 4, because in 4, everything takes up one square
cell,
on the grid. Yeah. Cell.
Uh-huh.
Here, things are bigger. A crossbow is going to take up like a 2x4 section.
Right, that makes sense.
Versus a little gem is going to take up 1.
And that does make sense, because like if you zoom out, like, if I'm carrying things, I can carry 10 gems, but I can't carry 10 swords. So I get it.
But say your inventory fills up with stuff, and you don't want to go through it all. You want to sell some stuff. You want to throw some in your stash for later to keep it. At any point in this game, and this is another great upgrade over the first game, you can open up a portal, go back to your little camp, sell and dispose and salvage everything you have.
Cool. Oh, at any point, you don't have to like find a town or like...
You don't have to find a scroll to open a portal.
Oh, yes.
It's at any time, you click the up button on the D-pad, boom, you go back, get rid of your stuff, jump right back into the action.
Well, that's great.
Another
Love
little
that.
thing that I feel like they just tighten the shoelaces. PoE 1 is great. PoE 2 is as close to perfect as I think we're going to get for a fantasy ARPG. The flasks. So you have your health and you have your mana. Mana is the resource that you're using for all of these skills. And,
whatever
tricks.
like magic you have or whatever. Yeah.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So you have different quality flasks. You have some that have different perks. You restore 25% of the health immediately when you use it instead of the globe slowly filling up.
Oh, neat.
Some of them have different, you upgrade them as you go. You find better ones. PoE 1, you had like 5 flasks equipped at one time, so it was half your D-pad was like hitting different directions to use different flasks, and it didn't make sense.
Yeah, seems annoying.
Yeah, this one, there's one for health and there's one for mana.
Great.
So you hit left on the D-pad for health, you hit right on the D-pad for mana. It all makes sense.
Incredible.
And you have more of those flasks.
That's nice.
Also, in the age of the modern ARPG, especially something like Diablo 4 that you and I have been playing so much for the last couple of years, you get a dodge roll.
Oh, nice. Yeah, so that's important.
Movement has always been pretty snappy. You can optimize towards that. My character in PoE 1 is just sprinting across maps, but in this game you have not only a nice clip of a movement speed, but you have that dodge roll, and it's not like Diablo 3 where it's like you only have a couple of them.
Yeah, and then you have to like wait for them to the time to reset.
No,
yeah.
It's the second you finish dodge rolling, you can do it again. It's just a button. You can hit as many times as you want. If you want to survive, you got to learn how to use it and do it tactically.
Yeah.
But technically, you can roll whenever and however much you want.
That's nice, because in real life, like you also, why would you run out of dodge rolls? I mean, I guess you get
I've never
tired.
dodge rolled in real life. But
what are you talking about? You don't do it every single day of your life. See, I feel like I've seen you dodge roll in something like Elden Ring or Dark Souls.
This is much closer to a Soulsy dodge roll. Yes.
Interesting. Okay, I want to put a pin in that. Come back to the Elden Ring Dark Souls thing. But the other thing I've really noticed you fixating on and maybe struggling with, but also enjoying, are the boss fights in this game. Can you talk about those?
Sorry, that shattered my throat.
The boss fights just overdid it.
Boss fights are probably my favorite part of this game.
Okay, cool. Which is funny because every time I look at you, you are like white knuckling through a boss fight.
But that's the thing.
Okay.
Because they teach you how to play the game.
Okay,
and how to be good at it.
That's the best kind of boss fight. We talked about that before.
It's a skill check.
It's not like hard for the sake of being difficult. It's difficult in that you learn from it and you get better and then you feel accomplished after getting better and beating it.
It makes you better because you can always find a broken build in any sort of ARPG.
Sure.
But you don't get better until you have to. You're a Baldur's Gate 3 player. Boss fights are a skill check, but not just that.
Yeah.
Because when I talked about how beautiful the game is, the bosses are gorgeous. The look, the environments, the weird little layers they have, the different phases of the boss fight where, okay, so the Act 1 boss, I mean, I can't even spoil it if I wanted to because it looks so cool, but it's this guy, it's this, I think he's a count, like Gregor or something like that.
Yeah, okay.
And he's at the end of this manor, this like castle.
Ooh, I love a castle.
He's got this like wolf aspect. So you start fighting him in this tiny little enclosure and you whittle down the health bar and you're like desperately dodging around to try to stay alive.
Yeah.
And then he falls on like one knee and turns into the wolf form.
Ooh, no.
And you fight the wolf form and you try to whittle down that health bar.
I love when a boss like shapeshifts into its final form at the end and it
resets
health and you're like, are you kidding me? Yeah, it's great.
This one does that
stakes are so
third
high.
Time.
Oh.
Into this hybrid form of this wolf guy.
Wow.
And it is so scary and so good. And I've beat that boss once. When I say I've played the first act 6 times, I mean I'm in the process of playing it.
Okay.
Most of them are right towards the end. One of them I beat it and went into act 2, but I've just been looping this act 1 because it is so unbelievably enjoyable and challenging and exciting.
Cool.
But yeah, those bosses, they're so creative. They're so memorable. They use the environments. They have their own elemental damages. You learn something new. They're so beautifully rendered. People always talk about this with Elden Ring, with Dark Souls, with any of these, quote unquote hard games.
Yeah.
That the bosses always look amazing.
They do. Yeah. I mean, they look so gorgeous.
And there's no exception here.
That's amazing.
They are so much fun. Every time I've gone back with another character and replayed even the minor bosses, I always replay them because they're so much fun.
That's great. And not to I don't want to constantly be comparing to Diablo 4 here, but we kind of have to. It is the closest, most direct comparison for this point in time and for our play experience, because the bosses in Diablo 4 were pretty uninteresting. I couldn't tell you a single one. I mean, I remember Elias because he's a main character.
Well, because you also have to fight him 400 times.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And I remember Mephisto and Lilith, but otherwise, I don't remember any other bosses. I don't remember any of them being particularly challenging. They were kind nothing,
of a bullet sponge.
Nothing to write home about. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. They don't. It was dumb. So it's so nice to hear that the bosses are so exciting and engaging, and both engaging in the gameplay, getting better, being a better player sense, but also in the sense of
aesthetics.
It's fantasy, role playing element of it too.
I showed you this freaky ass kind of sandworm thing with all these little pincers.
Oh yeah, that thing was freaky.
In all this kind of rabbit warren of caves, and this was in that enclosure at the end. Oh. And it was spitting acid at me. It was so much fun.
That's really cool. Yeah. So to bring it back to the Dark Souls comparison, the Elden Ring comparison of these beautiful bosses that are challenging and difficult, but also rewarding. The comparison to a Souls-like is interesting here because you don't think of a game like Path of Exile being similar to a Souls-like at all, at least not in my understanding of how games work. So can you tell me about those comparisons apart from the bosses, but I guess in terms of difficulty and overall feeling?
Yeah, I think difficulty is an interesting topic because we've talked about this before in some of our other episodes. We talked about God of War. We've mentioned Valhalla a lot, but there's a difference between difficulty as a gameplay choice and accessibility. And I think there's plenty of readability and accessibility in this game. The difficulty is, it's just about being intentional. Part of the fun of a Souls-like is the boss design will scare the shit out of you, so you panic. So you just start dodge rolling all over the place and you get hit by everything and you die.
Slash into whatever you can. Yeah.
So part of the learning curve of these games is patience. So it's about being tactical with your dodge rolls. Yes, you can dodge whenever you want. It's not on a stamina bar. You can dodge whenever. But when to dodge and what direction to dodge. What skills are good for this fight? Can I exploit the elemental effects of some of my spells or skills here? It's about thinking. It's more tactical. It's more intentional. It's slower. The game doesn't feel slow to play, but there's time for you to make decisions. It's not just
bam, 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 bam.
cooldowns.
Yeah,
Like,
because
you
that's
can
what
kind of-
Diablo 4 is. Even in the most
Yeah.
difficult parts, difficult meaning there are just a lot of enemies
Right.
that are attacking you. It's just slamming all the buttons as
You
much as you
cannot
can.
autopilot or you will die.
Yeah.
Any just minor group of like a trash mob of enemies can destroy you.
Hmm.
You are going to be slamming those health flasks constantly.
Sure.
And they refill when you kill minor enemies.
Oh, that's neat. Okay.
So every boss fight will have a section where it breaks and throws a bunch of little enemies at you.
So
just
that you can get
some.
more health.
Yeah.
Interesting. Do they drop like in Diablo, do they drop little glows or do they just automatically
They
refill?
just automatically fill.
That's
and that's
pretty
another
cool.
quality of life thing that's just, you don't have to think about it. It's
Nice.
just there,
Nice.
and you can focus on staying alive, being tactical, being smart. But like Elden Ring, I can push through Elden Ring.
Mm-hmm.
All the tough bosses I've come up against in Elden Ring, I've then beaten.
Interesting.
If you learn the patterns, if you really focus in on the systems, you can get through it.
Well, one of the things I've heard you talk about with something like Elden Ring is that if you come across a boss that is really, really challenging, what you can do is go
Grind.
go
over level.
go grind somewhere else so that you can sort of up your level, get technically, stats wise better, so that you have better loot, just better skills to then take on the boss. It doesn't seem like you can do that here in Path of Exile because it's not open world. Am I right in saying that?
There are also not enough quests for you to have a laundry list that you can go take care of and then come back.
And then come back. Okay.
But I think difficulty is not inherently good or bad. For me, if it becomes discouraging from experimentation or from curiosity, from exploration of a game's systems, that's when it totally turns me off. Just stone cold.
Same.
There's none of that here. In the same way, I've been able to muscle through Elden Ring and explore and enjoy and embrace the challenge of that. In the same way, I feel that way about Hollow Knight or Dead Cells or Ori or any of these other games that are punishing.
They can
if
get
you're not paying
really
attention.
challenging. Yeah.
I have loved the challenge of this game. And every time I lose, every time I die, I guess is the right word, I know what happened. And
You know
I learn
why.
a little something.
It wasn't just like, oh, this game is unfair. It's okay. I know what went wrong.
Right.
I know what I can try to do better next time.
Yes, or
'Cause
maybe
that's
I can-
motivating.
or maybe I can combine my skills in a different way, or maybe I need to equip a different weapon for this fight. So go back to your stash. Do I have a quarter staff maybe instead of a little sword or a wand?
Sure. And that's fun because not only is it like the act of making you be tactical and thoughtful
Right.
is fun and engaging for your monkey brain. It's also that you're encouraged to interact with and experiment with the game's mechanics and the
Yes.
loot that it has to offer you and the different skills. Like, it's encouraging you to play the game, which sounds so stupid and obvious, but that's what a game should do, rather than you just hating the game for what it is and just white knuckling through it.
Right.
It's encouraging you to interact with and play the game.
It's never this grinding war of attrition, just railing skills into this bullet sponge. It's never boring like that, like the
That's
worst
awesome.
moments of Destiny 2 or Diablo 4. It's achievable, exciting difficulty. All games are problem solving. All games are puzzle games. It's just in different forms. But this is exciting. Every puzzle is exciting.
That's really exciting to hear. I know you just gave this great nuanced take on difficulty, but to distill it down, is this easier or harder than something like Elden Ring? Like, what's easier or what's more difficult
It's
in your
hard because
experience?
I've gotten pretty good at Elden Ring.
Okay.
Also, I've played a bunch of those Souls-likes. Your first
Sure.
Souls-like is always the hardest.
That's a good point.
This is harder than Diablo 4 because it's not about mashing cooldowns.
Right.
And I love Diablo 4. I
Sure.
love some of that like ultimate power fantasy where you can break the game. And there are builds in Path of Exile where you can break it. But honestly, because we're about to talk about classes, there are some of my classes that are way more powerful than the other ones. And I like that as a break because some of the other classes are a little grindy. But the classes that are like perfectly tuned where I'm never too strong, but I never feel weak. I'm not hitting you with a wet noodle, but I'm not slamming through entire maps in one hit. When it's perfectly tuned to always be a struggle, those are my favorite classes so far.
Okay.
So
cool.
I'm chasing that difficulty. And for me, that's the highest compliment I can give a game that's quote unquote hard.
That's pretty cool. Okay, I love that. Did you find that it was more or less challenging than the first Path of Exile, or is that not a fair comparison because of all these quality of life updates?
More in a better way. It's more
okay,
and
cool.
it's focused.
Nice.
You just have to stay engaged.
Okay. Well, that's
what
good.
I want.
That's what I want in a game too. I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes you do want to like kind of passively tune out and just grind and have fun.
Yes.
But my favorite games are the ones that demand my attention.
Yes.
So that's pretty cool. Are there any other quality of life changes, not only between PoE 1 and 2, but also like compared to other ARPGs, like you're saying, like this is everything you want out of a fantasy ARPG? Is there anything else in here that they're doing that's making it just more fun and easy to play? Not easy as in difficulty, but easier on your other elements, I guess.
It feels curated.
Okay.
There's not too much of it. Part of me, when I start playing this and I'm enjoying the variety of the environments and the rainforest and the forests in this game are so, it's like the perfect fantasy forests.
Cool.
All of these environments are exactly what you and I love from dark fantasy. When I first started playing, I was sad almost that there weren't 50 other side quests and little objectives in each location.
Yeah.
But as I play through the game again and again and again, I really appreciate that. Because it doesn't linger on any of its great ideas or great locations. It moves on and shows you something new. It throws a new challenge. There's so many different types of enemies. And I moved into this really bright, lush kind of woodsy area. And this enemy popped out from three of these enemies popped out from this tree. And they're called bloom serpents.
Cool.
And they're like these freaky snakes with like heads that look like flowers.
Oh, wow.
Like the variety throughout the game is incredible. And as much as I would like to just grind some of these areas into the dirt with 50 other quests and do the laundry list thing that I like sometimes in our open world Valhalla type games.
Right.
I really admire that we just keep pushing with great new ideas and locations.
Well, and I think
there's a restraint here.
And I think that makes sense for a game that's not open world, because then you imagine that there could be more, that there is more, but you just aren't able to access it. But it feels like I think what's interesting about, like you're saying, like an open world game for something like Valhalla or even like Hogwarts Legacy, where there are dozens and dozens of side quests where you can fully explore, grind to the dirt these different areas.
Yeah.
But then once you've done that, you feel like I have now discovered the entire world, and this world no longer feels open world. It feels closed because I have closed all the loops and checked all the boxes. So if you 100%, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, you have discovered you've discovered everything. And so then the world is no longer open.
There's a fatigue.
It's almost counter to what it's trying to do. It's interesting.
I also think, as much as I enjoyed my literally 100 hours with Assassin's Creed Valhalla, I'm never really going to replay that game in that way versus PoE 2 or Diablo, where I will happily run through that a million times.
And you already have. You've already, it's interesting that you say you're not, there are like a few number of side quests. Like it's a finite number. And so it's limited, but you're not bored of it, even though you've done it 6 times. Like that's really
quick
interesting.
Succession.
That's pretty interesting, and I think very impressive for the game.
It's old school game design.
I like that. Yeah. So tell me about the different classes you played. So you said you've played 6 classes.
All 6.
Are there going to be more when the game's out of early access?
I think there are going to be 12.
12? Wow.
All with 3 subclasses, and when you choose,
36. There are 36 classes.
It's so cool when you choose, because the character select screen. It's all of the characters on the gallows about to be hung. And
shit.
You get to hover over them, and you see a little GIF, like a little video kind of B-roll pops up on the side, so you can see what the skills look like. You can see what the gameplay will look like.
Oh wow!
So when I picked
cool.
My witch class, I went with the minion build. I kind of spec'd into the minion thing, but I got to see the other 2 options that were like bone skills and chaos magic.
Cool.
So when you pick your character, the nooses, the platform drops, everyone else gets hung and dies, and your character escapes and jumps off the side into the water and escapes.
That's really cool. So it's like the opening of Pirates 3.
Yes, it starts heavy.
The king and his men. That's really cool. That's really fun. Okay, so there are going to be, we think, about 12, but currently there are 6, which is more than most other ARPGs that we've played, so that's pretty cool.
More importantly, there are more good classes than most other ARPGs.
Okay, so have you...
Diablo.
I guess, zoom out big picture, do you like all of them?
I like 5.
Oh, okay.
I love 5.
Do you want to start with the one you like the least?
Yes.
Okay, which one is that?
It's the same one I don't like in D4.
Oh, the barbarian.
Yeah. So this is called the warrior here.
Okay.
And part of this is, the way they're rolling out in early access, not all of the weapon types are available for certain classes. So,
okay.
For example, like one-handed swords aren't there for the warrior. So it's mostly maces.
Oh, okay.
There are different types of... So maybe it'll be different when we get more of that variety.
Sure. Good to have that context. Yeah.
So the warrior, I think, is the least interesting because it is mostly doing physical damage, and I enjoy rolling in some of the elemental stuff more.
Yeah, it's more fun.
But this one is, there's an old school, the term for like early Dark Souls is sword and board for the basic, just a guy with a shield and a sword.
Yeah.
And that's, white knuckling. That's always the toughest way to do a Dark Souls-y kind of game because you don't have any magic or things that you can lean on that might make it a little easier.
In Baldur's Gate, that's the fighter. It's the same.
Yeah.
It's the same, which I think is the same as in D&D. So
you really have to know, you have to learn all the boss patterns because there's no way to really cheese it.
Yeah, you can't rely on magic and stuff.
But right now, it's also just the least fun. It's Paul Tassi, wonderful games journalist. He also has a fantastic YouTube channel.
Yeah, he's cool. I like him.
He's done some videos about this, and he's talked about going through with the warrior class just as like an act of masochism, just to see if he can. It is by far the least fun, and I think it will be tuned and shuffled along through the early access period.
Okay.
It's okay. Is. I'm glad I played a bunch of other classes first, and I know the core systems.
I was going to say, I doubt you started with the warrior.
No, and it's okay. It is more of a fundamental skill check, but I also just think it's the least entertaining so far.
Okay.
It's okay, but it's not good. It's not as frustrating wet noodle as the barbarian is. I still despise the D4 barbarian.
I'm going to keep fighting. The barbarian is good now. Whatever was wrong with it when they first launched
I'm too scarred.
It's
from
better
the launch.
now. It's
I'm too scarred for the launch.
I think
through the whole campaign.
one of my favorite, apart from my rogue, my favorite character that I've played in D4 is my barbarian. So
see, I love the rogue and the necro, and there's a character in D4.
Well, I'm burned by my first fucking necro experience.
We all carry our scars. But as much as I back when D4 had 100 levels per character, I leveled a necro to 100.
That's right. Gurgle was his name.
Mm-hmm. With an H, but I won't tell you where.
Okay.
I played a witch in PoE 2.
Okay, tell me about that witch.
That one, I did a minion build. So it feels like a necro in Diablo.
Okay, yes.
And that, of all of these 6 classes, because a big thing that one of my gripes about PoE 1 was that I didn't feel that all the classes or all the builds were viable. And that you almost had to use a build guide online.
Yeah, I hate that. I don't like when a game is like that. I mean, games like this are going to have build guides online, and there are people out there, there are players who want to
most of them
really maximize and have the best build. That's great, but I don't think it's an accessible way to design your game where you have to optimize in this best way and use a build guide on the internet to enjoy the game. I find that awful. I hate that.
I think it's fine if there are overpowered builds that you can spec into, but I think most builds with most skills should be viable.
Yeah, just to survive and enjoy the game, and to for it to reward your curiosity and experimentation, But
I wanted to be on both sides of the fence so I could speak to both experiences.
Yeah.
I played 6 classes. I used a build guide for 1. And that was for this witch, for this minion build. And I was playing a bunch of this last night because I'm pulling footage. If you're watching this on YouTube instead of the podcast feed, I should have gameplay from all 6 characters running in the background.
Nice.
And the witch is the only one I used a build guide for. And it is by far my strongest character.
That makes sense.
And it really hits that empowering power fantasy.
Cool.
It's incredibly fun and it feels good.
That's cool.
It just makes you feel cool because I've got a lot of fire skills and I've got this cool energy drain. So I use the fire and that rouses a bunch of my minions. And then I've got this thing that I can fire and do single target damage and just melt their health bars. So I was just moonwalking through maps with this witch because I was using this build. And it's been so much fun. It reminds me, because I'm using this great build, it reminds me of my necro in D4 when I was just melting through endgame and Helltides.
That's really interesting.
So I recommend that experience, but obviously I can't speak to, without a build guide, how fun that would be.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. So I think the most similar class, in my mind, to the witch would be the sorcerer.
Yes.
So can you tell me about the differences between those two classes and what you like about either, both of them?
So the sorcerer is the first class I played because that was my class in Path of Exile 1.
Oh, I thought you played a witch in Path of Exile 1.
I think
Or have they done renaming and it's
kind
confusing?
of renamed it.
Okay.
Because when I was looking at those 3 little subclass previews,
Yeah.
I built a lightning witch in PoE 1. So I
Okay.
wanted to do a similar thing in PoE 2 just to kind of compare with a control group when I
Sure.
started this new game.
But this time it's a lightning sorcerer.
Well, I was looking at the subclasses because I went over to witch and it was minion, bone, and chaos magic. I was
Okay.
like, this is not what I was expecting.
Where's my lightning?
So I looked in sorcerer and it was like lightning, fire, ice.
Okay.
So I built that.
Okay.
So that was the first class, my first brush experience with most of this campaign, but not the one I finished Act 1 on. It's been okay. It's been fun. I really love building elemental. I think I limited myself by deciding I was going to do lightning because I don't think that is the most fun path. I might respec this character because I haven't been having that much fun with the lightning build so far.
I see.
I'm doing fine damage. I'm kind of doing a mix of just kind of flat physical damage and all of my lightning skills, but it's not quite as fun as I wanted it to be. I had one really overpowered skill in PoE 1 with lightning, and I haven't gotten that sort of high so far with this sorcerer.
Okay. This might be an unfair question and maybe you can't answer it and maybe it's just comes down to the type of skill, but what's the difference between the sorcerer and the witch? Like other than like lightning versus, chaos or bone, like what else is different about the two classes?
Well, I think the elemental focus of the sorcerer is different because you can really spec into that versus minions. I mean, that can be with bone skills. That can just be with physical damage.
Yeah, okay.
It's a different... You're paying attention to resources in a very different way.
I mean, I say this. I couldn't tell you the difference in Baldur's Gate 3. I couldn't tell you the difference between the wizard and the warlock and the sorcerer. Like, I don't even know.
They feel very different.
Okay.
And I think so far I'm preferring the witch, which is a nice surprise.
Yeah, okay, cool. In a totally different realm, tell me about the mercenary. The mercenary, I've seen a lot of clips of online, and he looks cool.
So he's the one with the crossbow that looks like a machine gun.
Okay, but he's not a ranger, because that's different.
No, so the ranger, and I think it's good to compare and contrast these. I'm glad you did that in this order, because the ranger is the Legolas fantasy.
Yeah,
it's a woman with a blonde kind of pixie cut. And she looks so cool with the armor. That's my favorite class so far.
Oh, okay.
That is the class that I've beat Act 1 with, that I beat that wolf guy, that boss with.
Very cool.
And this, when I kind of talked about this romantically earlier, the ranger is that class, maybe because I'm not using a build guide, that is exactly as powerful as it should be.
Cool.
It is. You get a sense of victory, but it's always hard fought.
Yeah.
I'm not mulching through enemies.
You're not just
but it's not the wet noodle thing either.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So I've really loved the bow and arrow, and you do have some crossbow kind of abilities with the ranger, but I think that one for me is the best tuned for a Souls-like ARPG.
Okay.
I have loved that because I like a little bit of distance just to stay safe, but juggling between all of my abilities with the ranger, jumping up close when I have all those crossbow bolts that hit way harder. I really love juggling the skills in the ranger. I think that is such an active play style. That class has been so rewarding.
Awesome. So how does that compare to the mercenary?
The mercenary is kind of the flashiest one. That's the one everyone was jumping into because in the trailers it's like, this guy's a machine gun in a fantasy game.
I mean, yeah, who doesn't want that? Right. Sure.
And I think that one's interesting because most of the skills you have equipped are like different kinds of ammunition.
Oh, okay.
So I have some... You remember that scene in John Wick 4 when he's got those dragon breath shotgun bullets?
Yes.
Where it spits fire. And you're viewing it almost like a Diablo game.
I forgot about that.
You're viewing it overhead and he's just blasting these... It's like it's belching flames.
Pretty cool.
I have a skill on my mercenary that can pretty much do that.
Well, that's fun.
And that's cool because you can do that against a bunch of little enemies when they're mobbing you. But then there's also a rapid fire.
Well, that's always fun.
Almost like the Demon Hunter in Diablo 3.
Yeah, I was going to say, do any of these feel like that Demon Hunter character?
I've tried to build my mercenary like that, and I have not played too much of the mercenary, probably half of the first act. I'm going to get back to I still have to pull footage for him, spoilers, but that one is okay until you play the ranger.
Okay.
It's still fun, and you can build into it, but learning to quickly switch between the ammunition types instead of full-throated skills, big lightning attacks or whatever, it just doesn't feel quite as satisfying for me.
Okay.
It's a fun and viable class, but the Ranger really, really spoke to me.
Okay, that's pretty cool. And then the final one that you played is the Monk, which is another unexpected. Usually that's not the kind of class you gravitate towards.
No.
Like there's a Monk in Diablo 3 that I think you've played just for the sake of playing it, but I don't think you really connected with. I've played a Monk in D3 and really liked it. Monks are also available in Baldur's Gate 3 and lots of other fantasy games. But so tell me, I feel like they're really different across different games and platforms. So tell me about this Monk.
A Monk can almost be the ultimate melee class.
Cool.
Without the almost the security of a shield.
Sure.
At least the way I play them.
Yeah,
the Monk has more of a it's hand to hand.
And usually they've got some kind of staff or cool things on their wrist, but they're not like fighting with a sword and a shield. Like it's not that kind of hand to hand.
It's more jumpy.
Yeah.
You have to move around constantly. It's not just you get in, swing the sword, and then you hide behind the shield. Mm-hmm. It's much more active. You're darting around the playfield more.
Neat.
So I knew I wanted to play all the classes, so I jumped into Monk, and I didn't use a build guide, and I really tried to ignore what I wanted the class to be and just pursue what felt good.
Okay.
So I just, by pure, finger to the wind, ended up building a Frost Monk.
Ooh.
With all of these ice skills.
Neat.
And that has been so much fun. So
interesting.
When I'm up close, I've got this skill. It's almost like throwing like a smoke bomb, like at your feet, but it blows out ice on the sides.
Cool.
Where I can do that until I freeze the enemies, and then I switch to the quarterstaff, and I basically hit them and they shatter.
Oh, nice.
So you're building up this frost until people are frozen and they stop in their tracks and they look like ice sculptures and then you can just shatter them.
That's pretty cool.
Balancing physical damage with that frost and cold damage. That has been so much fun. I have this almost earthquake ability where I throw, you see this trail of ice through the ground and then it pops up and damages people. So I can do ranged damage and then I can do that smoke bomby thing when I'm up close.
Nice.
It's a really tactile class.
I think, is this the one I watched you when you were trying to beat that one boss who, towards the end of Act 1, who he's got a big hammer or axe or something that he drops and then all these minions come out? I feel like I watched you play. I don't remember what it was.
I think it's the Crow Bell or something like that.
I saw you throwing all the ice and stuff, and it looked really, really cool.
Yes.
So okay, nice.
I did a Frost build recently, I don't remember when, a couple seasons ago in Diablo IV, and I really got a lot out of it because I'd always avoided that. It just seemed like the least cool. Like if I can electrocute you, cool. If I can light you on fire, also cool. If I can turn you into an ice cube.
Oh no, I'm cold. Yeah, we talked about that before. Cold damage is never that interesting to me, but this sounds
when you
fun.
Lean into it, it's incredibly cool, and the way it synergizes with physical damage and shatter.
Well, I was gonna say that makes sense because what I think sometimes I feel like in games like this, it's a little bit lazy, and just in that it's there's fire damage, meaning you see fire and they take damage, but this feels like more actually leaning into that role play element of what would actually happen if you froze a person and then hit them. They would shatter.
Right.
So I like that it's interactive and it environmentally responsive in that way. That's really cool.
And you can really lean into what you like in all of these classes. In what feels good, you can optimize for that. Oh, I like the freezing. I like the jumping to physical damage. So I'm going to focus on freeze buildup. On cold buildup so they can get frozen as quickly as possible.
That's pretty cool. Okay. So, but your favorite of those you said was the witch? No, it was the sorcerer.
My favorite class?
No, I'm sorry. It was the ranger.
It is the ranger and the witch.
Okay.
And then probably the sorcerer and the mercenary. Well, no. Monk, sorcerer, mercenary.
Yeah.
And then at the bottom, the
warrior. Okay.
It just doesn't feel fully baked.
Yeah.
But they're all good. They're all viable.
Awesome.
And none of them are the terrible experiences we had at the beginning of D4.
Okay.
To be fair, D4 has 3 good classes now.
Yeah.
Rogue and
it's got
Necro.
Rogue, Necro, and I think Barb is good.
Okay.
I think you've got to try it again. It's great now.
I still don't love Druid.
No, Druid has never worked for me.
Spiritborn's fine.
We've it's Spiritborn's fine. It's fine.
I would say these classes have a level of depth. They feel inspired and they feel more exciting than most of the D4 classes.
Okay.
I'm still going to love playing the new season of D4.
Yeah.
But for who I am now, for what my tastes are now, for who I am as a gamer now, after 30 years of playing games. This is, for me, the perfect fantasy ARPG.
That's amazing.
It's exactly what I wanted. And
that's really cool.
For a little context and a little weird personal anecdote, we just moved again. And when I was packing stuff up, your eyes roll back like a shark. You're on autopilot.
Yeah.
You're just throwing shit in boxes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I have a physical copy of Elden Ring. It's on a disc. Packed the disc. Didn't mean to, but I packed away the disc. And it was one of the first... It's like at the very back of all the boxes, so I can't.
We can't get to it. Yeah, because we're in between things anyway. Yeah.
So right before the early access period opened for PoE 2, I was jonesing for some Elden Ring. So and I was in between seasons for Diablo. So the fact that this is Diablo 4 meets Elden Ring,
scratching that itch for you.
It's scratching every itch.
That's really cool.
It was perfectly timed for me.
That's amazing. Wow. So I guess if you think zoom out, if they're fans of Diablo 4, I assume you would recommend this to them.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. I think it'll be a new experience. It'll make you better at both games. I think it will focus and engage you. You'll never be able to do autopilot. It is just, if you like fantasy games at all, if you like ARPGs at all, I think this one, obviously you can wait until full release and it's free to play.
Right.
And that's, risk-free. You can jump in and you'll have a great time. But right now, paying $30 to support this indie development team feels great.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you find that there are issues or bugs with this first chunk of the game that is available?
No. I mean, sometimes when I'm streaming to capture footage, it'll be a little worse, but that's my fault.
Yeah, okay. Interesting.
So no, not at all. And
that's awesome.
They're going to have full cross progression when they do launch, so I'll be able to play the same character on PS5 or Xbox or Steam Deck.
Yeah,
so
that's amazing. I love that.
Quality of life out the wazoo.
That's awesome. Well, and my final most important question is, do you think I would enjoy this game? Seems like I would, but...
I mean, that's what I've now spent 46 minutes trying to persuade you of.
Compared to my not very positive experience of PoE 1, not because of anything the game was necessarily doing wrong, or just things that I don't personally enjoy.
Yes.
Seems like it.
I think
that's
PoE
all solved.
1 is an uphill battle.
Yeah.
I think PoE 2 is much more challenging, but on a
in the way that I like.
Even keel, on a way I like.
Yeah, not in a way of this system is clunky and hard to navigate.
It's approachable complexity. It's engaging difficulty. It's those qualifiers that make all of those core principles so much more effective and attractive. You can sense that this team has been working in this space for 10 years.
Cool.
This feels like the well-oiled machine. This feels like that sequel that is all killer, no filler. It is I can't speak of it highly enough. And I haven't played Act 2 or 3 yet. I dabbled in Act 2, but I know I'm going to enjoy the rest of this ride. Cool. And I'm so excited for 6 more classes, for however many more acts they're going to add over the year.
Yeah.
They're going to continue updating PoE 1.
Oh, that's really cool.
This team is just incredible.
When is the game going to be fully released?
I don't know if there's official word on that.
Okay.
I think it'll be 6 or 12 months from when the early access period opened, but the mock speed that they're making adjustments already, adding another thing I talked about I talked about to you before we started recording with these maps. There are checkpoints. Some of the maps can get pretty big. They're not just big open spaces that you have to lawnmower, but some of them are pretty big. There are little checkpoints. There are little stones you walk by that light up, kind of like Altars of Lilith.
Yeah, yeah.
And just in the first couple weeks of it being early access, they added those as fast travel points in between individual maps.
So they're in real time taking people's feedback.
Constant quality of life. They are not
that's pretty cool.
fetishizing difficulty and misery. You need scrolls to identify certain items. You pick them up and they're all red. They're they're grayed out, but they're red where you can't see what the exact attributes are going to be.
Oh, okay.
So you have to use a scroll of identify to reveal all the perks of this item.
Oh, okay.
In games like Diablo 2, which is where that comes from, you don't always have those scrolls. So sometimes you're just carrying around who knows what for a while.
It's not unlocked yet. Okay.
I hate that. That's frustrating.
It's annoying.
There's no perk to that. That's not difficulty. That's opacity. That is frustration.
Yeah, this is for the sake of difficulty. That sucks. Yeah.
You meet a guy, maybe a third of the way through Act 1. You bring this guy back to life, the hooded one that I mentioned at the beginning.
Oh, the hooded one. Okay, full circle moment.
The reason I wanted to shout out him, once he becomes one of the NPCs in your camp, you can drop a portal at any time, always, and get back to your camp. You walk over to him, he will identify all of your items for free.
Wow, so you don't even need scrolls.
Not only do you always have scrolls to identify, I've never been short of those scrolls, but you can also just go to this guy. So if you
Anytime.
interact with the systems, if you talk to the NPCs, if you see what items they have for sale, the game gets, easier is the wrong word, but you get better stuff.
Yeah.
You get better at it. The more you engage with these systems, the more you play the game, which you'll enjoy doing, the better you get at it. And that is the kind of compounding
That's the loop you
reward
want.
structure.
Yeah.
That's the gameplay loop I want right now.
Very cool.
This couldn't speak to me more.
That's so exciting to hear. I'm so glad you had such a positive experience. We don't love to promise that we'll talk about things here on the show because sometimes we end up not enjoying things, but I can pretty much guarantee that once this game is fully available or you've played more of it or you have more things to say, we're going to talk about it again. Maybe I'll play it and I'll have stuff to say. I don't know. But
if there's enough to say. But if we don't do another one, this is our full-throated, wow, I can't believe what this team has pulled off with this game.
Awesome.
Those trailers looked so cool and so promising, and we were so looking forward to it, and it has just shot past those expectations.
I'm so glad you decided to pull the trigger on the early access. I'm glad you're enjoying it.
It's every night.
Yeah, I know. It's been great to see. Well, dear listener, let us know what you're thinking of Path of Exile 2. Have you? I'm sure there are many of you out there who have played beyond Act 1 or who have passionate thoughts about the warrior or whatever.
What build are you running?
Yes.
What classes have spoken to you the most?
Tell us down below. And thank you so much for listening. And if you like what we do here, you can support the show by joining our Patreon. It's $2 a month. Not only will you support us, but you will also get access to our whole back catalog and ongoing editions of our bonus episodes. We do sometimes 1 a month, sometimes 4 a month. It depends. But that bonus content is, if you like fantasy, we did a whole series where we went through Fire and Blood, which is the source material for the House of the Dragon show, that Game of Thrones crossover. But we also have talked about a lot of other things over on Patreon. We'd have
games too.
Yeah, we've talked about games. We have our breakfast buffet where we cover like lots of things all together, all in one episode. Usually they have some kind of theme or tie, and that's always really fun. Also, if you like what we do here, the best way to support us even more is by buying Cam's latest book, Lemon Tarts in Space. It is a light sci-fi dark comedy. It is Ripley Scott's Alien by way of Ridley. It's
Ripley's
confusing.
The lead character.
Her name is Ripley.
It's tough.
Ridley Scott's Alien by way of Monty Python. That, I think, is the best way to describe it. It is so much fun. It's an audio drama or paperback or both. You can get those via the link in the description. Otherwise, like, comment, subscribe, all the
And for gaming
stuff.
episodes, if you are new here, we have those other 2 PoE episodes. We have we got a full-ass Diablo IV
series. We got so many Diablo episodes.
We did an episode for every act. And
the campaign,
every season.
And also the expansion and all kinds of things.
Vessel of Hatred. We did a Diablo 3 retrospective. We talked about God of War. We talked about Fallout 3. We talked about Starfield. We talked about Final Fantasy 16.
Hogwarts Legacy. All kinds of stuff.
We've been cranking lately.
And the Baldur's Gate 3 episode is coming. I just haven't finished the game yet, and I want to finish the game. I know it's been out for like a year and a half now, but it's a long game. Give me a break. But it's coming. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch you on Friday for another brand new episode.